So you're considering moving to Brunswick and you're wondering what are the pros and cons, the good and bad things about living here, and there's really not that much information available online. Well, that's what this video is for. So let's just jump right into the pros and cons of living in Brunswick. Hey everyone, my name is Eddie Brady and I'm a realtor here in Maryland. And if you have not visited my channel before, first of all, thank you for being here. And second, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I make videos like this every single week about the best places to live in Maryland. And if that's you, you're making a move right now or planning to in the near future, reach out to me. My information is listed below and I would be happy to help you. So like I said, there's not that much information available on living in Brunswick and especially not that much available on YouTube, if anything. So I figured this is the perfect opportunity, being a Frederick County local myself, to tell you all about what it's like to live here, the pros, the cons, and the good and the bad. And I help clients buy and sell property in Brunswick. I also visit Brunswick on a frequent basis, so I figured this is the perfect video to make right now to help you decide whether or not you should move here. So Brunswick is located on the western side of Frederick County, right on the Potomac River, which is the dividing line between Maryland and Virginia. And it's kind of on the outskirts there. It's still considered the DC capital region, but just barely. It really should be considered Western Maryland, being so far out there. But it's located just off of Route 340, which will take you into Charlestown, West Virginia, and Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And that could also take you up to the northeast into downtown Frederick in just about 20 minutes. And most people, when they're in their Maryland home search, don't see Brunswick popping up on their search. And it's a real shame because the city has so much to offer, so many good things and pros that it has to offer to people that want to live in Frederick County. So the first pro of living in Brunswick is that it's the ideal commuter location. And the reason it's such a great location for this is that it's sitting on the Potomac River, and there are very few places that you can cross the Potomac River into Northern Virginia. And so many people are working in Northern Virginia, in Ashburn, and Reston, and Chantilly. And because of these bridges that go across the Potomac River, living near them is crucial for anyone that wants to commute. So if you want to commute to Northern Virginia from Brunswick, most of the cities that you're going to commute to will only take you about 45 minutes with no traffic. And that's a huge deal considering most people that have to commute to Northern Virginia have to travel down Route 270 or Interstate 270 in Montgomery County, which is a disaster. So much traffic, there's so much congestion, there's always accidents on this highway, but you get to avoid all of that if you live in Brunswick. And not only that, if you work in DC or Southern Montgomery County, there's a MARC train right in downtown Brunswick that'll take you all the way to DC. Now it's going to take you about an hour and a half to get there on the MARC train, but just imagine instead having to drive down that major highway I-270 with traffic and congestion. It could take you 2 hours to get to DC on a bad day versus being on the train. You could sit back, pop out your laptop, do some work, and you have nothing to worry about all the way down to DC at Union Station. And another thing that's made Brunswick so popular in recent years is that there used to be ferries that crossed the river further down the Potomac, but they closed a ferry called White's Ferry, which is a major route that people were crossing into Northern Virginia. So that forced them up to cities like Point of Rocks and Brunswick. So Brunswick is really a key location for commuters that need to get into Virginia. But if you're not commuting to Northern Virginia or DC or even Frederick, then you might care more about what the city itself has to offer. And that brings us to our second pro of living in Brunswick, which are the things to do here. There are a surprising amount of things to do in this big town, small city, as they like to call it. The city puts on their own events throughout the year, throughout downtown, like the Spring Festival, the Independence Day Parade and fireworks, the Veterans Day Parade. You have Brunswick Railroad Days, which is a 2-day event where they celebrate their history of being a major hub of the B&O Railroad. It's just a cool place to be. The town actually does have events. They have a culture to it that's pretty cool. So if you're looking for things to do within the city, you'll have that throughout the year. But if you're not into the festivals and the parades, which I personally am not, you might be interested in the outdoor activities, and this was where Brunswick really stands out. This is why I love Brunswick so much. There is so much to do outside, being so close to the Potomac River, the Appalachian Trail, the Appalachian Mountains. So let's dive into a few cool things that you can do when you're living here or if you're just visiting. One of the most popular things to do in Brunswick is to take a ride on your bike on the 184-mile-long C&O Canal towpath. It is a really well-maintained trail that goes all the way from Cumberland, Maryland, down to Georgetown, right by DC. And what this used to be, it used to be a towpath for barges back in the 1800s, and they really only used it for lumber, taking lumber down from the Cumberland area down south towards DC. And the reason it wasn't used that much is right when barges were about to take off in America, trains were invented and just completely made these canal paths obsolete. And once it flooded back in the 1900s, it was completely useless anyway. So they kept the towpath itself, and it's just a really cool place to ride bikes. It has a lot of history on it. A lot of the original locks and lock houses are still there. The closer you get to DC, the more of that you see as well. They actually have working locks where you can see them, reenactments. So it's a really cool trail to ride on. And if you're in Brunswick, you're probably going to take the ride from Brunswick up to Harper's Ferry, which is a great place to get lunch, and then bike back. And for those of you feeling extra adventurous, you could bike the entire path, and there's campsites along the way. It usually takes 2 nights to do it. You can do it in 2 full days, but it would be a really, really rough ride. But there's also another thing you could do, which is paddling the entire Potomac River from Brunswick all the way down to Georgetown. And it's going to be well over 40 miles, probably closer to 50 miles. You can camp on islands on your way down. But if you're feeling adventurous, those are 2 things you can do in the Brunswick area to fuel that adventurous spirit. So there's also great hikes in the area of Brunswick. There's a really great trail to Weaverton Cliffs nearby, which is a crazy view over the Potomac River. And if you go up towards Harper's Ferry, there's also a hike to Maryland Heights, which overlooks Harper's Ferry from the Maryland side, which is a really, really cool view. And then on the other side of the river is Loudon Heights. It's a little farther of a hike, but also gives you a really cool view over Harper's Ferry and over Maryland Heights. And another great outdoor activity, which is something that I'm about to go to Brunswick to do soon, is mountain biking at the River's Edge trails. Now, these are hidden gems of trails. No one really knows about them. A lot of people are really focused on the Frederick area trails or Montgomery County and Little Bennett, but not a lot of people know about River's Edge. So this is something that I'm really excited to check out. I've looked at a lot of YouTube videos on it. You should check them out yourself if that's something you're into, and you'll be really impressed. They look amazing, so I'm excited to check those out myself. And after you're done all the outdoor activities, or if they're not really for you, well, you're in luck because there's a lot of places that you can go visit and eat in Brunswick, and there's a few of them that I really recommend. So the first one is a great breakfast spot. It's called Beans in the Belfry. It's in an old historic church, a century-old historic church, so it's got a really cool atmosphere, all the old church windows. It's just a cool place to check out, and they have all-day breakfast, great coffee there. And if you want a place for lunch, I highly recommend Boxcar Burgers, which has 2 locations, one in Brunswick and one in Frederick, and it's all locally raised beef, so it's a great local establishment to support. And for dinner, I highly recommend going to Market Table Bistro, but this is just over the river into Virginia in Lovettsville, just 6 minutes away from downtown Brunswick. It's a great place to go for dinner. And I'll give you one bonus, which is the Smoketown Brewing Station, which is a great brewery in downtown Brunswick. And they also have some really great flatbread pizzas and paninis that no one talks about. So if you're looking for, or you're a craft beer drinker, this is the place for you to check out. So again, this small city has a lot of things to do, but what is another great thing about living in Brunswick? Well, that brings us to our third pro, which is the real estate market. And I've talked about how COVID has affected the real estate market in Maryland a lot, but Brunswick is one of those places because now that people did not have to work at their actual job locations, they decided to go to places with more fun things to do, better city cultures around Maryland, and more affordable housing, and Brunswick is exactly that place. The current median home value in Brunswick as of July of 2023 is $425,000, but that number is very deceiving, and the reason for that is there's a lot of brand new developments on the outskirts of the city, so we really have to separate it between the new construction developments in downtown. And if you're looking at downtown, the older houses that have been in Brunswick, the historic homes, the ones with character and charm, The median home value for those is $327,500, so a huge difference there in median home values. And the median rent in downtown is $1,550, where if you just go 20 minutes away to Frederick, the median rent in their downtown is $2,150. So that's a significant difference if you're looking for a place to rent. So that's why a lot of people are moving to Brunswick, especially remote workers and people that maybe are flex working. This is the ideal location for affordable housing. So that's all good. There's a lot of great things about living in Brunswick, but what about the bad things, the cons of living in Brunswick? And I would have to say that the first con of living in Brunswick are the trains. So yeah, you have the benefit of the MARC train, which can take you all the way to DC, but that's not the only train that's in Brunswick. It was actually one of the major hubs of the B&O Railroad, the historic B&O Railroad back in the day. And this town was actually known for being completely covered in black soot, black coal soot and smoke all day long because it was a major transfer station for the B&O Railroad. So that's great if you're a train lover, if you're a history buff, but if you don't like the sound of trains rolling through your city, then Brunswick would not be the place for you. And the second con of living in Brunswick is the lack of options when shopping. And there are enough essentials here. You have the grocery stores, you have local hardware stores, but you're really limited on options here. So if you are really into shopping, you like having your options, and you're not just an Amazon shopper, then you're gonna have to drive into Frederick every single time. It's 20 minutes away, and there's everything you could pretty much think of in the Frederick area. But in Brunswick itself, you're stuck with those small town options like you would be in any other small town, but it's definitely a negative thing if you're someone who really likes to shop, really likes a lot of options close by to your house. And the third con of living in Brunswick is the lack of jobs. And this is because there's really only service industry jobs here. There's really not a lot of industries in general represented here. So if you're looking to move to Brunswick for work, which I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're probably not, then Brunswick's probably not the place for you. But the great news is that Brunswick is seeing a ton of revitalization and money pouring into the city because of all of the remote workers, all of the flex workers that have moved out from the DC capital region farther northwest into Brunswick. It's really helping the city out. There's a lot of new development going in on the outside of the city, which is bringing tax money into the city. You're just going to see a lot of improvements, a lot more money being poured in. So that's the positive side. But if you are looking for a job here, it's just not the place for you. And that pretty much wraps up the pros and cons of living in Brunswick. And I hope this video was helpful for you if you're considering moving here. And if that's you and you're considering moving to Brunswick or any of the surrounding areas, I would be happy to help you. I'd be happy to represent you as your realtor. My information is listed below. You can also schedule a call with me at my link in the description. I am really excited to hear from you if that's you. And if you're a Brunswick local or you were in the past, please comment below what you liked and didn't like about the city. It really helps our viewers to decide whether or not to move there. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so that you stay up to date on all of my videos about living in Maryland.